So I want to invite the following young stars. Abhilasha Padhy, co-founder and joint managing director of 80 Decibels Communications. Abhilasha, welcome. Kunal Arora, managing director of Edelman Digital. Munavar Attari, managing director of FleishmanHillard, India. Ritika, Jauhari, President, Strategy and New Business Development, SPAG. And moderating the panel today is Krishna, Vilasini, Director, Corporate Affairs and Engagement at LOreal, India.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Hina, for the lovely start. I think it's kind of got us all thinking about future-proofing. What we want to do today is really have a fun conversation around how PR will look like in the next 10 years. For us, I think future-proofing really happens at 3 levels. As an individual, how ready we are. As a team, how prepared we are. And as a company, are we ready to sail through the next 10 years? And 3 things that, as we were discussing earlier before the session, 3 things that really stood out for me are resilience that we have as teams, as individuals and companies, relevance, how hungry we are to learn constantly and to be up to date, whether it's technology or a specific vertical that we want to focus on. And the last one is really the most important one, I think, is respect for change and understanding that PR as an industry has a low barrier of entry, but also a very easy exit plan. So that's the structure of our discussion today. And before we talk about the future, I would actually like to take a step back and maybe just ask around the table here, what is that one learning that you have seen in the last 10 years in PR? Maybe I'll start with you.
Sure. In terms of learning, I feel, the change, has taught us to remain agile, to be able to, identify, new trends, to be able to, have short-term goals. Because if you talk about PR, the ambit has expanded so much. Today as PR professionals, or like I would, like to call communication professionals, I really feel that it's not just PR, it's a whole ambit of communications. We have, kind of found our way into the boardrooms, into the C-suite discussions, So we really need to be agile, to be able to have short-term goals and be dynamic enough to then, make decisions that, suit the new situations. We can't have one long-term strategy. We need to be agile. We need to be consistently thinking for newer ideas and adapt to new challenges and situations.
Would you like to go next, Abhilasha?
So I think the last 10 years have been the most exciting in PR in my entire 20 years of career. And I think one thing that stands out for me is the focus on storytelling. From the space of humanizing the brand, of closing the gap between the brand and its users, people and various stakeholders. And I think one example that comes to my mind very clearly in recent times is Airbnb's response to the Ukraine crisis. I think that came from a space of authentic, genuine storytelling, messaging, and also love for the world. And the second one is almost addictive, is Spotify's the rap listing that happens end of the year. That focuses on the interconnectedness of the world, again from a space of making it real for its user. So I think the storytelling and being authentic, how it is the focus of what we do, how it is the hero, is one thing that stands out for me in the last 10 years.
Great. Munavar?
Yeah, thanks. I think the last 10 years, as the co-panelists have said, things have changed very rapidly. But in the larger umbrella and theme of future-proofing the industry, I think agility, yes, has been extremely important, has been a great learning. And that's one area. And the other thing would be understanding the client's business is something which is non-negotiable at all. And I think that's one point, big takeaway for me personally as well. I think understanding the client's business at the macro level, understanding India, because at the end of the day, we are running businesses in the Indian context. And today, of course, we just can't even say understanding India, it's about understanding the world. So I think two takeaways for me in the last decade has been how can we be far more agile, and I still think that there's a lot to be done as far as agility is concerned for the industry. And it's not about quick turnaround. Agility is something very different. It's structural, it has deep organizational issues that we have to deal with and so on. So agility on one side as a pillar, and the other I would say is of course understanding the socio-economic environment in which we operate for our clients.
Kunal?
Just having a digital person sitting with 4 PR people, I think that's a drastic change. Last 10 years, at least 5 years back when I had attended Praxis at Hyderabad, it was all PR people, just 1 or 2 digital. Yes, there were, sessions being held by digital people. Just inclusivity of other professions coming in, specialists, practices, that's been a drastic change over the last 5 years. I wouldn't even say 10. Just last 5 years, we've seen a lot of influx of specialists coming into the PR domain and thriving.
Thank you. Moving to the present, Munavar, I have a question for you. In the last 3 years, specifically, post-COVID, how do you think the PR mandates have really changed?
Okay. I think as we say that the more things change, the more they remain the same. So what has changed, of course, is let's say what has not changed. What has not changed is the focus and emphasis on getting the basics right. The basics of the industry, the basics of our profession. There is far more emphasis on understanding that on the skills part. In fact, it is a newfound focus on those areas. What has changed, of course, is there's a lot more empathy that has been added to the business and to the professional. Between clients and agencies, I've seen a lot more empathy. Between teams, I see a lot more empathy, unlike earlier. So that's a very positive change. Or maybe it's part of what's happening globally as well. So that, of course, definitely has changed. What has changed, or in the nature of the client mandates, as you mentioned, I think the ones that have stuck around in terms of, or have only gotten stronger in terms of relationships, are the ones where PR or communications had a role to play at trying to solve a very complex problem that a client has. Yeah, and the brief is complex, and the analyzability of the work that we are delivering is very high. Those are the mandates that have continued. In fact, they have grown. The relationships have gone even more stickier. What has not grown, or I can say has fallen by the wayside, is where the relationships and the work that we deliver was transactional. And when I say transactional, I'm not adding a value judgment to the work, because that's also equally important. But just in the nature of the game, I think that's what has fallen back. And the focus is more on trying to solve a business problem using a communications as a solution. I think that's where those relationships have got stronger, and I think that's where the I can say the strategic pivot for the industry from a future standpoint also is likely to be. You can go back to 2008 and see, again, issues and crisis kind of grew in terms of mandates there, and product PR kind of took a backseat. It came back, and now again we see that the focus again is going back in terms of focusing on complexity. And again, it's not only PR, it's overall, you see, that's where the solutions are coming from.
Great. Talking about solutions and where they come from, Abhilasha, I have a question for you. I think if we have to cross the ocean, we have to build a bridge which is strong enough. And whether you're a big company or a small company, it's important that the bridge is sturdy to the future. So my question to you is small the new big?
So I don't think size matters. I've worked in large agencies. I now run a new age agency. I wouldn't like to use the term small. Worked in corporates where I worked with freelancers and smaller agencies. But I think what really matters is what that agency brings to the table. Is it agile enough? Is there subject matter expertise which will understand your business challenges and translate it into your campaigns? Is there a culture of people putting their best forward? I think those are the things that matter. And lastly, an index on creativity. I think creativity is a much abused term, but I think if put right and brought into campaigns in everyday life of what we do, it can really change even a small press release, as we call it, or an interview. So I think those are the things which are more important, and those are the things which will differentiate the kind of agency that you choose as a partner and strengthen the bridge.
Thank you. Thank you, Kunal, for being part of this panel. My question to you is, do you think, so I sensed a little bit of sarcasm in your voice when you said, I'm glad to be part of this panel. Do you think that sarcasm will go away in the future, that digital will be the centerpiece of communications?
So, the way the sessions have sort of progressed over yesterday, digital is still being treated as a medium and a platform, which I don't think so should be the way it's been talked about. If it's our daily way of communicating, talking, doing your press releases, passing down information, then why is it being treated as a separate platform or a separate discussion point? If we as communication custodians are saying that we own the narrative, why is digital as a medium taking the forefront and saying that it only needs to be digital? So in that way, a slight, diversion on that front. But again, you've got ATL, BTL, the split which has been caused. Why has the split been caused? Because we basically said marketing is not part of comms. And just reversing the funnel here, people look at marketing, advertising as one piece and PR as one. If we are the communication custodians, why don't we have control over marketing? Advertising from a paid perspective, totally understand, but we need to control the narrative. And if it's going on ATL, BTL, whatever space, it is this team here that needs to control it. So we've restricted ourselves to a certain format and certain role and not expanded it. Does it merit a conversation in panels like this, or even CCOs coming out and saying that what marketing is doing first needs to be vetted by the CCO? Interesting place, and depending on CCOs, agencies, and leads, it can play either way. But this differentiation will stay. ATL will be ATL, BTL will be BTL. Who takes over or who tries to occupy the other person's space is where the thing is. And that's where the future proofing comes in, that are we moving towards the marketing side to control the narrative? Or are we, swimming in our own lanes and saying this is what we do and let's stick to that?
Thank you. That reminds me that the public in public relations is really the various stakeholders. So an idea can come in a casual t-shirt and jeans. It doesn't need to have the uniform of, hey, I'm digital, hey, I'm PR. Some of the best ideas that I have seen have come from, advertising ideas have come from PR teams, and PR teams have come up with market research ideas. So I think future is really going to be that. It's going to be open, it's going to be flexible, but it's really important that as a group of leaders here, we recognize that an idea that we have needs the right stakeholder to be pitched to. So as a PR agency or as a market research firm or as a tech consultancy, it's important to find the right stakeholder to pitch to, whether it's a client or it's your boss or your peers within your team. So I think that's my view, but I would like to ask you now, how do you work in a very interesting sector where the stakeholders are very different. How are your mandates changing, and what do you see happening in the future?
True. So thanks, Krishna, for asking that. And really saying that I work in an interesting, sector. So stakeholders, today are in a very different space. They are much more informed, they are much more involved. So I would feel that, the basics remain there, right? We have to engage with the stakeholder, but what has really evolved, not changed, but evolved is personalization. For each stakeholder, we need to very clearly articulate what is in it for him. What is in it for him to listen to you, to be the advocate for that particular brand. So it's all about personalization. It is all about really understanding the ask of the stakeholder, understanding the consumption pattern of that stakeholder, and articulating your story accordingly. Beyond that, of course, it's about consistency. It's not about, the attention span is so low that you can't be a sporadic engager. You engage, for an episodic period, and then you take a break, and then you engage again. It doesn't work like that. It has to be consistent, it has to be continuous, and it has to be done in an engaging manner. So if we talk about healthcare, here it is all about, I feel empathy is a very, very important part, I have done campaigns, wherein we had to build awareness about issues. We had to, really build awareness around breaking of taboos, So their empathy plays a very, very important role, demystifying science, simplifying messages so that it reaches the masses and stays with them. After all, in every sector, but especially in healthcare, we are trying to bring about a belief shift. And for that, you need to really personalize the messaging, you need to be consistent, and you need to simplify the messaging for all our stakeholders, whether it's the patients, it's the healthcare providers, it is the government, regulators, or investors. So 3 things: personalization, consistency, and simplifying, what we are trying to say is something that is important.
Great. Abhilasha, I'd like to ask the same question. Since you focus on technology and consumer tech, how do you see the mandates changing in the next 10 years?
More integrated for sure. I see a lot of requests coming in, not just from the marketing teams or the communication teams. I see the CEO's office, the founder's office being very, very interested in how comms campaigns are being created. I see a lot of interest in employer brand building, and I think what all of this brings us to is the fact that there are so many platforms for PR or communications to use these days, that it's the message or the story which is tailored exclusively for each of your stakeholders, which can then be disseminated through each of the platforms. I think that is very, very important. And I see, which is very, very heartening, is that when we speak integrated comms, it is PR that is taking the lead. We've done so many campaigns in the last 1 year, which are outside the orbit, outside the traditional orbit of PR. You could call it ATL or even BTL, but we're doing that, and that just is very heartening to see that change. And I think it is because we've, taken the lead in this entire integrated comm space.
Great, thank you. I'd like to just shift gears now. We've spoken about publics, we've spoken about the engagement patterns and what we see in future. One key component of this shift or the growth that we are going to see remains talent. And we have discussed at length about how it's very easy for people to enter the field, and it's also very, easy to exit this field. And, in the previous discussion as well, our colleagues have discussed that. What do you think are the skill sets, or what is the kind of orientation that people of now should be having, for a future-proof, PR world? You would like to start?
Well, I think the talent that we come across now, for example, someone like me interviews almost maybe sometimes 4, 5, or maybe even 10 people almost every week. The skill level of the talent that we kind of come across is very high, but what's lacking is the attitude, I believe, the way I see it. So skill level of a average 22, 23-year-old is much better, much higher much more powerful, they are much more aware of things, they are much more opinionated. So that piece compared to maybe a decade ago is much stronger. But the attitude in terms of the sense of entitlement, the sense of putting their head down and trying to give in, let's say, several years to focus, to learn. I think maybe that my sample size is very small, so maybe I'm looking at it from that perspective. But I think that's one area where I think we need a lot more work to do. Of course, retention, I mean, every couple of years you are dealing with a new agency completely, right? So, and that's not only true for, the tenure is an issue across, right? And more so, it's more aggregated in, PR, public relations, media, this kind of industries as well. So I think getting people to, commit to a long term, and there is a lot that we have to do, there is a lot that the individual also has to do, the kind of work that we have to offer, the kind of clients that they work. So it's not a simple answer. There's not one thing that kind of goes into it. It's a very complex thing, and but I think I would focus more, today I evaluate people more in terms of whether they are the right fit for the culture that we have to offer rather than the skills, because the skills can be developed and sharpened over a period of time. But on the other side is something which I believe is more for the individual to do than for us to kind of shape that.
Thank you. You've touched upon a very sensitive topic of attitude, and somewhere that kind of directs to a generational, if I can say so, gap. What is it that we can do? Most of us have spent more than about 2 decades in this industry. What is it, maybe you can start, what is it that we can do to create a more positive ecosystem for youngsters to stay and flourish, in this industry?
Yes, totally. So I think generate respect and greater recognition of what communications can do. Once we are able to, really explain that to them, the way they treat their work and the role that they can play will change massively, and then the exit plan will not be that easy, So I feel if youngsters, or even if we understand that, we are no more just a doer. We are a driver of business goals of any organization. We are really, it's not about just enhancing the media visibility. It is about, really achieving the business objective. It is about generating business through the communication, activities that we do. So if we are able to make our talent understand that, I think they will be up to take the challenge and be a part of the business growth of their clients, of their organizations. So we are no more doers. You are the driver. Go ahead, take ownership, and just drive business for your clients.
I'd like to ask you, Abhilasha, since you do work with a very young team, what do you do to motivate them?
That's a tough one. But, so I think, about talent, and something that we go by is hire for attitude, train for skills. So I think skills are very easy to be trained if there's an inclination to do well. In terms of trying to build the right attitude, that could be difficult. So I think hiring with, the point of view of the right attitude of resilience, of wanting to make true meaningful impact, and learning and unlearning, because the PR space is so fast, it's changing every day. So are you ready to unlearn what you've learned in the last 1 year and go back and learn from the scratch again? I think that's the kind of attitude one needs. And I think we are seeing, so many people from different, professions entering into PR. Dentists, bankers, engineers. So training then becomes very, very, very important, because while they're great professionals, how do you gear them and nurture them for PR? And for that, we do a lot of learning sessions internally at ATDB. We also have, induction sessions wherein we get experts to give them a flavor of what they are getting into and what PR is all about. We're trying to also get in and get tie-ups with platforms that can do learnings in terms of digital for them and enhance. We've also tried to tie up with global experts for specific point requests like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and make it a lot more integrated for our team. In terms of boosting their morale, there's a lot one can do, but I think your everyday interaction with your people, if it is authentic, not just in messaging but in the interaction, and it shows true care, I think that will see you through. when you're trying to be really adding value to their lives and being honest with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I add a point here, Krishna? Sorry to cut you, but I think that's very interesting what you just mentioned. The kind of diversified talent that we're having. We have dentists, as part, we have specialists, as part of our teams. As a healthcare communications, specialist, we have, medical content writers. We have people, who have specialist experience in research, in, data and analytics. So there I feel for our talent to make them understand the value of collaboration is key. How much you can learn from each other. I will not go into the PR specific skill set. I think that is something that, will happen on the job. But how much you can collaborate and understand the nuances of the sector from specialists. If there is a person, we are trying to, have people on board who are from the management side of it, who understand the business acumen of it. Or people who are so good in research, how do you do that research and, apply it to your campaigns. So collaboration is one aspect I cannot emphasize on enough, and I think on a daily basis I'm telling my team members, please collaborate, please talk amongst each other, do not work in isolation, and that can really inspire them to stay on, to learn more and deliver more.
That seems quite utopian. Please collaborate, please work together. But I'd like to bring back the attention to, the work that we do really shines at an individual level and at a team's level. And when, and when the talent is hungry for growth and is not patient, and, I think the previous panel, one of the team members said that they definitely want to go for that job abroad in Europe, and they wanted it faster and visas to be expedited. So it's really not so easy and hunky-dory with talent. So I think my question then maybe to you, Kunal, is, are there any fun ways to really keep the atmosphere, bright and positive? So I'll give you an example and maybe you can respond to that. I remember a few years ago, there were a couple of pitches that we had for our mandate in healthcare. And the winning team had a very interesting construct. The youngest team member was an expert in media relations, and the oldest team member was an expert in social media. And that for me was a great example of open learning, reverse mentoring, and an atmosphere where people were not scared to do things that were conventionally boring or or different. So how do you in your workspace make sure that this environment is created?
From the HR side, obviously multiple things happen, but within teams, I think making teams part of multiple communities is one piece which has really worked for us. So besides being in your swim lanes of digital, corporate, brand, PR, however, specialist sectors, you obviously have communities which are created of like-minded people. How they engage is knowledge sharing, can be from a platform perspective, can be from a sector perspective, but that's when like-minded people come together and talk their specialities coming into that. And that's the best way to get talent to talk, interact, and even put their ideas up front. The second part is making client communities which are interlinked. And by interlink, I mean you have a team of 6, 7 people, but from various backgrounds to come in. Yeah. Now, one can be a social media leader, but the other 5 have to be from different pieces, from different fields, sectors, etc. And I think that's really helped in the organization just to engage, learn, and keep yourself active. At the end of it, when a person comes into the industry, you just put into one sector, practice, or offering, saying you will do this. In the first couple of years, just let them, test various fields before they actually realize that here's a speciality or here's an area of interest which I want to develop more. So I think that in the earlier years, giving that flexibility has really helped in our organization. Other than that, obviously bonding exercises and pushing people for integration, etc. That's definitely there. But again, the more you push, the more reluctant also people get. So that's
Okay. One more question for you. Do you think that reverse mentoring works? Are we humble enough to learn from the young?
reverse mentoring, skip level meetings, mentoring, it definitely helps. And the openness, the hierarchies which have been made with the new talent coming in, I don't think so they're needed. Yes, there are managers, general managers, MDs, but having a direct line of communication and understanding what that person needs at even an AE level, it sets perspective. And the engagement and openness that comes in from talent at that point of time, it is amazing.
Right. Any other thoughts on talent here before we move on?
I mean, talent is a topic which perhaps needs its own 50 minutes, so we can go on. But yeah, I think, but this has been the integration, breaking down of barriers, breaking down of swim lanes, collaboration, etc. All this has been the promise of our industry for the last decade, and I don't think so we've made enough progress, as we always kind of pat ourselves on the back. So at some point, as leaders in the industry, we have to take some blame as well and be candid about it, that there's a lot to be done in this space for us to kind of really activate and realize the aspiration, the vision that some of us kind of articulate, because there's a lot to be done on ground to fortify some of these things that we discuss.
Okay, all right. I'd like to actually, we're in the last leg of the discussion, and what I would like to really end with is to hear your views on what is that one thing that you want to be removed from the world of PR, and what is the one thing that you want to add? So whoever wants to go first.
Well, maybe 10. We can get 10. 10 things to remove.
So in the interest of time, we'll probably have 8. So yeah, why don't you start, Abhilasha?
So one thing I'd definitely like to remove is when we measure metrics, remove AVE, because it feels...
I hope everybody in the hall can hear AVE.
Add equivalent, because it makes me personally feel very dependent on another function to prove our credibility, which isn't fair. We shouldn't be dependent on an advertising equivalent to prove what we stand for. So that is definitely one thing, and ingest, maybe get more of the advertising budget so that PR budgets are increased. But on a more serious note, make it more integrated, and we lead as the integration, and more campaigns, be it digital, be it social, be it video-led, be it ATL, BTL is being led by PR team, and we want to see that go ahead. That's something that definitely should become a part of what we do.
So no more AVE in our conversations and
Yes.
more budgets.
More budgets, yes.
Okay. Would you like to go next?
That's I think the key takeaway from this panel: more budgets, because more respect, so more budgets. And therefore, I would like to start with what needs to be added is partnership. The whole thing about PR communication professionals being partners is a dimension that needs to be added to what we are doing. And therefore, what needs to be removed is the isolated, transactional, fulfillment of deliverables. So that needs to be removed completely, and can only happen if we are treating ourselves as partners, we are asking the right questions, we are understanding what is the business problem and how we can help our communication, Copcom people resolve it. Something that I always tell the team is that we need to strengthen the comms person on the other side. So how do we do that? Ask the right questions and then think of your unique solutions.
Thank you. Kunal?
Controversial one here. So I'm going to ask people to just raise their hands. So for me, just use removing the word PR from this industry.
So true, so true.
You know, just raise your hands if you want
No
PR to be removed and replaced with communications overall. It is so important for us to broaden the horizon and just look at it in a very broad sense. Swim lanes have been defined for us, but there's nothing stopping us from expanding those and looking at what actually we can do. You know, it's great to see the participation of the experts coming in here, but that needs to be expanded. And the only way we can do it is being a comms agency as opposed to just a PR agency.
Absolutely.
We're actually going to have a jar, Amit, going forward. Every time anyone says AVE, we put $100 into it. And every time your client asks for digital PR ideas, or your peers or your managers ask for digital PR ideas, please feel free to put that $100 in that jar. Use it for a good ideation brainstorm over chai and pakora, but do that for sure.
Yeah, no, I completely second the points made here. I would just like to add that when you're talking about, future proofing, just to step back and look at it, future essentially means what? It's like the time after the present or something like this, right? Which essentially is a moving goalpost. It's not like one destination that we are kind of moving toward. It's kind of, it's an aspirational thing that we want to future proof our business, and therefore learning and unlearning, as we spoke about, is very important, and that's something which kind of we should all have at the back of our mind. Just what we could add to the industry, I think collective bargaining, which advertising industries have done very well, media industries have done very well, digital spends, all creative agencies have done very well, but PR agencies have, to my mind, maybe I'm new at this role for some time, so maybe I don't have that much window to that, but I think
Communication agencies.
yeah, very well. Yeah, it starts here. Yeah, but that's not done very well. For example, a decade ago, maybe more, all media, print publications kind of got together and decided how they're going to treat brand press releases, right? PR has not done something similar. Collective bargaining of, we are the first people who know what's hitting the organization, good or bad, in most cases. So the power that we have not really used it that well to collectively bargain. The issue of, again a bad word, but undercutting, the race to the bottom in some of the budgets that we see. I think we have to collectively come together and say that, we are not going for, we are not presenting, making 20 presentations to the same team for no fee. We are not, we are not going to work below a certain fee in the industry. I mean, the average retainers have been when I was a manager and what today, there's not significant change, but the average, salaries of an account manager have maybe grown 10x or something like this. So, and those are the challenges that maybe collectively we can face. So certain things we have to do internally, which we have to add and remove, but externally as collective, because we are not only competing with ourselves, we are also competing what's happening in other agencies and other businesses, other communications aspects. So I think there is a lot from that, from a business of communication. So we spoke a lot about communication, but the business of communication is where I would believe there's a lot to be done collectively, and that's perhaps I would urge the team members to focus more on. Yeah.
And what do you want to be banned from, the PR conversations now?
I mean,
one word.
Maybe the word strategy. It's again, yeah. And that list is long, right? It's becoming influencers. It's becoming. I saw AI and data. Yeah. Okay. Come on. Yeah. But and our understanding of those subjects starts and ends with the words. I mean, and we have to. If we have to get our act together, we really have to go deeper into this, and starts here at the senior level as well, rather than just going with the flavor of what's in and start using those flowery terms without really having any meaning behind it. And it's very obvious. People see through it. The clients see through it. When we just use it just for the sake of it. So I think strategy, influencer, yeah, it's about time we kind of got over using those kind of words.
So I think we've got more than 8 pointers there. Maybe any closing comments on, how you do think, an ideal future-proof organization should be, if you want to just talk about that very quickly. I'll start with me. I think a ready organization is one that is focusing on the current, is looking at their teams, their clients, their business issues, their communication issues every day from a present lens, and also preparing to be fit for the future. Because those who are prepared for the future comes in bahut aaram se. I think those who are not, it just hits like a ton of bricks. So for me, the focus really is on, is twofold. The first is really doing well now. So focusing on what's happening now and how do we address the current issues, but yet still have that lens always, that eye always on future. So that for me is a future ready organization or a team or an individual. So I'll leave it to the floor now.
In order to be future-proof, we need to aid our clients who are ready to take innovative, bold bets today. So we need to have that ecosystem in place wherein we can respond to the challenge that they are ready to take and support them while excelling, like what you said, in what we are doing currently. Give them the confidence to just think innovatively and, support them.
So innovation, okay, over to you.
Keeping it simple, keeping it real and authentic across stakeholders, be it your employees, be it your clients, or be it the industry at large, and bringing in, good doses of creativity. And the last one, which is the most key, be ready to unlearn. I think be ready to unlearn and adapt to new ways. I think those are the things.
Great. Innovation, creativity. Muna?
Well, I think I read somewhere that all the skills that we need to run an agency today have all come into being maybe in the last decade or so. So essentially that's kind of where it starts, right? What the PR or communication of the future will look like. It's like we are trying to change and replace the parts of a moving vehicle, right? Which is going towards it's not at all easy. It's not at all easy. So I think there is a lot from that perspective that we need to understand. But I think I'll kind of close with something which I feel, for example, we hear a lot about this Web3 and metaverse and things like these. So what's trolling going to look like in the metaverse? Yeah, advertising has no clue, to be very honest. We speak to ad agencies quite regularly. Perhaps maybe they have not really thought about those kind of issues.
So really being up to date with what's the buzzword and really bringing value there.
This thing of marketing kind of focuses here and now a lot more, and there is nothing wrong in that. That's we have to kind of focus on more from a long-term perspective, and I think that's where sometimes we kind of miss the bus a bit.
Right. Okay. What about you, Kunal?
Very short. Be selective. As an agency, as a practice, we don't need to run after everything. If we have the talent, let's do it. If we don't, stand up and say, right now, not capable, not ready, and I don't think so any of the stakeholders would have a problem with that. So be selective in what you take up, because success will only come in where you're confident, and if you're not confident still going in, it is going to be not too good.
Not too good. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful. I think as individuals, those who wake up early morning on a Saturday and are here at 9 a.m. for an event like this, we are the future-proof guys at an individual level. So thank you for the motivation. And thank you for this opportunity to talk to this wonderful audience. We look forward to seeing you soon at the next Praxis.
Thank you, Krishna.
Fantastic. Thank you, Krishna, for doing a great job with the panel. Thank you so much, guys.